Hello, everybody. I'm Kevin Daly for PATH. Welcome to Answers, Special Education Today for September 30th, 2025. In this edition of Answers, there will be a school update by yours truly. There will also be another edition of Special Education's Greatest Hits, an occasional feature that offers tips and ideas for parents. My guest in this edition of Answers is Walt Glomb, who is the Executive Director of the Connecticut Council on Developmental Disabilities. And he's here to talk about the civil rights of people with disabilities here in Connecticut. As always, there will be time for Q&A at the end for participants, so please get ready to send us your questions at the end. Answers is brought to you by PATH, a nonprofit organization which for almost 40 years has served Connecticut children with disabilities and their families. For more information about PATH and this webinar, please send me an email, kdaly@pathct.org. While you're online, check out our website, pathct.org, and check out our presence on Facebook, X, and the PATH YouTube channel. Here's the fine print, folks. This webinar is not legal advice, it's not healthcare advice, or advice of any kind. It's the sole property of PATH and not to be used for any other purpose, although we do encourage you to share links to our YouTube videos. Here's the special education update. Right now, all eyes are on Washington, D.C., as the impending shutdown of the federal government is looming, and it's expected to start at midnight tonight. All non-essential federal operations will shut down. Federal funds for public schools will be frozen. That includes funding for special education, general ed, Title I, and all the programs that affect students with disabilities. How will this affect special education students? Well, apparently, in the short term, not very much, according to the news source Politico. That's because most of the funds that America's public schools depend on come from state and local governments. And in the short term, schools can live off those funds, in the short term. Virtually every school district in every state receives federal funds, but some schools in some states rely on federal funds more than others. For example, in 2022, schools in these states got more than 20% of their funding from the federal government. In comparison, in the same year, schools in these states, including Connecticut, got less than 10% of their funding from federal funds. In Connecticut, it's actually 8%. Losing 8% of their budget would certainly hurt Connecticut schools, but not as much as other schools would be hurt in other states. So tomorrow, special education will be pretty much like it is today, unaffected by the shutdown in the short run. How did this happen? How did we get to this point? Well, here's what should happen. Every year, the U.S. Congress is expected to pass a budget for the upcoming fiscal year that begins on October 1st. The process usually starts with a proposed budget that's debated and amended and finally approved by vote by both the House of Representatives and the Senate, the two parts of our bicameral legislature. The final step is to have the chief executive sign the budget, and everything is supposed to be settled by October 1st. This is basic information right out of high school civics. Then, over the course of the budget year, the federal funds flow from Washington, D.C. to the Connecticut Department of Education, and then to local school districts. The House of Representatives has already voted to approve a proposed budget. The snag is in the Senate, where there aren't enough votes to approve it. Without a budget in place by October 1st, starting at midnight, the federal government must shut down all non-essential services. Public school administrators are already bracing themselves for setbacks. The proposed budget calls for cutting federal funds for public education by 15%. That's K through 12 public education. Federal funding for special education is pretty much unchanged. It's possible Congress could pass a continuing resolution to keep the government funded until a budget is adopted, but word on the street is that's not going to happen. So for now, it appears the cat's still up in the air, as Grandma Daly used to say. We don't know how it's going to land. We don't know when we will have a budget or exactly what it will look like. I'll have more on this topic in the next edition of Answers. Meanwhile, here in Connecticut, this month the CEA, Connecticut Education Association, which is the largest teacher union in the state, released the results of a teacher survey that shows many public school teachers, including special education teachers, are not satisfied with the conditions in their schools. According to the survey, stress and burnout are the top issues, much of it caused by staff shortages, local budget cuts, and a lack of planning time. Problems with students are another concern, as well as low pay and a general lack of respect for teachers. The survey's bottom line, most teachers, 60%, would not recommend the teaching profession to a relative or a friend. Folks, it's not good to have our children in the hands of teachers who would rather not be teaching, especially special education students. They depend on individual attention from their teachers much more than their typical counterparts do. Many of the concerns that teachers raised about schools also have a direct effect on our children. What can be done to fix this situation? Finding answers to that question could take an entire webinar. Whatever the answer is, and how effective it is likely to come down to a matter of money. Money, the cause of and the solution to most of the problems in public education. Now it's time for the occasional feature called Special Education's Greatest Hits. Today's hit is about best practices for school-home communication. And all I want to say on the subject is this: school-home communication should be regular, two-way, and meaningful. And not just because Kevin says so. Back in the 1990s, two researchers conducted a series of studies on public education. They wanted to identify the characteristics of schools where students are high achievers. The researchers were Ann Henderson and Nancy Burla. Here are a few of the many books they published on the subject. Henderson and Burla found that parent involvement is critical to student achievement. When parents are involved in their children's education, their children make better progress, there are fewer behavior problems, and they're more likely to graduate. Henderson and Burla determined the key to making all this happen is communication, school-home communication that is regular, two-way, and meaningful. These are the words of Henderson and Burla. This recommendation, like most of Henderson and Burla's recommendations, it was embraced by our leaders in Washington, D.C. at the time, which was back in the early part of this century. It was added to the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, ESEA. That's the federal law that defines the scope of public education. According to ESEA, school districts must be responsible for ensuring there is regular, two-way, and meaningful communication between family members and school staff. See those words in there? Connecticut state law requires school districts to have a written policy on school-home communications, which states it must be regular, two-way, and meaningful. Here's an example. An excerpt from the school board policy of the Wallingford Public Schools. The district is responsible for providing meaningful, two-way communication opportunities between the parents, guardians, and the school. See those words again? And that's not just in Wallingford. Your own school district has a similar policy. Every school district in Connecticut has a similar policy. Look it up. So it's not just a matter of some guy on a webinar saying you have the right to regular, two-way, and meaningful school-home communication. It's federal law, state law, and your local school district policy, which gives you that right. School-home communication is especially important to parents of special education students who are not good communicators. Without regular input from teachers and staff, it's difficult for parents to understand their child's progress and find ways to follow up at home. Schools have many ways to communicate with parents these days: email, apps, as well as the good old-fashioned communication booklet and phone calls. If you, as a parent, feel your school-home communications are sufficient, then that's great. Keep up the good work. However, if you feel that your school-home communications are not what they should be, if you don't understand your child's progress like you should, and if you're unsure how to follow up at home, then do something about it. Ask to establish better communications. A good time to ask is during a PPT meeting, so a suitable arrangement can be planned, and the plan can be written up in the resulting IEP. As you know, PPT decisions must be followed by school teachers and staff. It's important for parents of special education students to understand what's being done in school so they can build opportunities for their child to practice at home when whatever they learn in school. It's like with professional football players. They spend time learning in instruction, learning what it takes to win a game, but they spend a lot more time on the field practicing what they learned. Instruction plus practice, that's how you win the big game. Instruction plus practice. Special education students get their instruction in school. After instruction, there's only a limited amount of time left in the school day to practice what was learned. The natural place to practice what's been learned in school is at home, but it can't be accomplished unless school-home communications are regular, two-way, and meaningful. When school and home are in sync, great things can happen. You know, parents often tell me they feel their child would make more progress if their special education hours were increased, and, sometimes that's what it takes. But no matter what the level of service, parents can make the most of it by creating opportunities to practice at home. That's how you can get some real progress. It's more than making sure your kid does their homework. It can be as simple as choosing certain vocabulary words to use at home, reading signs together when driving in the car, or the topics you choose to discuss while eating dinner. Or if you read books together, your child's teacher can give you ideas to use at home over the course of the school year. But the key to making it work is school-home communications that are regular, two-way, and effective. It's the linchpin that connects school and home. Be sure to join us for the next edition of Answers on October 14th. My guest will be Deb Bibbins, founder and CEO of the nonprofit organization For All Ages. Up next is my interview with Walt Glomb. Many Connecticut parents of children with disabilities are concerned that the changes coming out of Washington, D.C. will erode the civil rights of students with disabilities. What will happen to Connecticut children and Connecticut adults that have disabilities if Washington, D.C. fails to support their civil rights? Here to answer that question is Mr. Walt Glomb, who is Executive Director of the Connecticut Council for Developmental Disabilities. Walt, welcome to Answers.
Hello, Kevin, and thank you for the invitation. I'm glad to be here.
Well, thank you for coming. And this is not your first appearance on this webinar, so I am grateful for your presence. Before we start talking about civil rights and civil liberties here in Connecticut, Walt, I wonder if you could tell us a bit about your organization, the Connecticut Council for Developmental Disabilities.
Yes, thank you, Kevin. The Council is a department of state government that is funded entirely by the federal government to assist Connecticut in developing home and community-based services for people with developmental disabilities so that they can live in their own communities and their own homes of their choice. Essentially, that's what we do. We are primarily we work through grants. We receive an annual formula grant from the federal government, most of which we spend by making grants to nonprofit educational organizations and occasionally hiring consultants to help us improve policy in the state of Connecticut.
How long has Connecticut had a DD council?
The council is authorized by the Developmental Disabilities Assistance and Bill of Rights Act, and was initially authorized in 1970, well, at the federal level in 1970. The council was created in Connecticut by order of Governor Meskel in 1971. And I believe I am the fourth executive director since that time. So we've been here for a while doing the good work.
I see you go way back. And civil rights and preserving the civil rights of people with disabilities, that's what the DD Council is all about. And that's a concern parents and families have, and adults with disabilities. We're all in that same boat. And, parents, even if you have a young child with a disability, eventually, if all goes well, they'll become an adult with a disability. So all this is relevant. It's not just about school. And there seems to be an erosion of civil rights going on, at least on the federal level. Walt, what do we have here in Connecticut that can protect people with disabilities and preserve their civil rights and equal protection under the law?
Well, thank you. Yeah, there is, I'll say there's some confusion at the federal level. And as you say, people with disabilities do have civil rights. They have the right to equal protection under the law. They also have a right to access and to accommodations. And until recently, part of our advice, well, forgive me, I heard your intro, so I'm not giving advice, but part of our training to families has been to appeal, when necessary, to the federal government for enforcement. It's not clear that strategy is going to be very effective in the near term. So, some of us went back and we read the Connecticut Constitution. How many people in the class have read the Connecticut Constitution recently? Right, probably not many. So, and what we found is that we have strong protections enshrined in our state constitution and in our state statutes. Key among these is your right to equal protection under the law. And that's in our state constitution in Article 1, with an equal protection clause that explicitly covers physical and mental disabilities. And as you say, this covers education, which, by the way, is also guaranteed in our state constitution, public education, but also a host of other services that you need, not just as a child, but throughout the life: healthcare, transportation, housing, and so forth. So we were interested to see that Connecticut had these protections embedded in our constitution and statutes. So earlier this year, the council published a set of fact sheets that explain how you may assert your rights in Connecticut under Connecticut state law and constitution, and through organizations and agencies here in Connecticut.
I see. And what is in that information? What kind of things are cited?
Well, back in, I think it was in May, we held a press conference and we released 4 fact sheets. These are available now on a web page that we have, and if you don't drop the link in the chat, I will. But the 4 fact sheets include lots of helpful information on how you can assert or get assistance in asserting your civil rights in Connecticut. The first one names the state agencies that are charged with enforcing your civil rights. So you don't have to go it alone. And those agencies are, for a start, the Connecticut Commission on Human Rights and Opportunities, CHRO. That's a department of the state. state government and their lawyers, and you can go to them and with a complaint if you feel that your civil rights as a person with a disability have been violated, and they will investigate and, if necessary, take action, with the organization or individual who's violating your rights, who's denying you equal protection. So that's the first one, and they cover a broad array, housing, employment, pretty much everything, except special education, of course. And as many of you probably know, special education is handled through the state Department of Education through what we've all come to know as so-called due process. And by the way, I didn't include this in my intro, but I'm a dad. My son is now 37 years old. He lives with a developmental disability. So I've been through the special education thing. It's been a while. So the State Department of Education, Bureau of Special Education, also has a role, specifically in enforcing your right to a free and appropriate public education in the least restrictive environment. So for general issues, you might go to the Commission on Human Rights and Opportunities. For special education, you would go to the Bureau of Special Ed, and there's a link on their website on how you go forward with filing a complaint or a request for a hearing if your special education rights have been violated. Now, we also have in the state the Office of the Healthcare Advocate, which is a special office charged with ensuring your rights to healthcare. They can help you with issues with your insurance company or Medicaid, but as their title indicates, they're limited to the healthcare sphere. So that's also a state office. And more recently, the state police have created a hate crimes investigative unit. So if you feel that you or your family member have been the victim of a hate crime focused on an individual's disability, you can appeal to the hate crimes unit of the Connecticut State Police. So links to all of these state agencies are available on that fact sheet that we released back in May. Now, those are just state agencies. There are also a larger number of private nonprofit legal aid organizations that can help you. Chief among those for our population is an organization called Disability Rights Connecticut. They're a private nonprofit, also receiving federal funding the same way that I do, although they're private. And they have lawyers who will listen to your issue and, if necessary, pursue it. They can file a complaint with the appropriate offices, either state or federal, to see that your rights are upheld. Another organization for children is the Center for Children's Advocacy. Again, a nonprofit law firm that fights for the legal rights of Connecticut's children. A lot of that gets focused on healthcare and needs of children with special healthcare needs. But again, it's a group of lawyers. They're a nonprofit, and they can help you if you feel your rights have been violated. In the mental health space, we have an organization called the Connecticut Legal Rights Project, another nonprofit law firm that will defend the rights of individuals with mental health conditions. And then we have the broad, general legal aid organizations, the Connecticut Legal Services, the New Haven Legal Assistance Association, Greater Hartford Legal Aid. Those are the three big legal aid organizations. They help everybody, not just people with disabilities, but they're available. The ACLU, we've talked to get them alerted and more interested in the issues that we're facing. And finally, if you're not aware of it, there's an organization called the Special Education Legal Fund, which can help you if you need to take legal action regarding your special education program and you need a private attorney. So those are the private legal aid organizations. Now, beyond legal aid, there are a a number of nonprofit advocacy organizations. And this is the third of our 4 fact sheets that lists the advocacy groups. Now, these aren't lawyers. These are groups that advocate for policy, can often do a lot of educating and can inform you about your rights, but also about services and supports that might be available. These are organizations like the ARC of Connecticut, Mental Health Connecticut, the Connecticut Family Support Network, PATH, which is the sponsor of this program, is among that group, the Down Syndrome Association of Connecticut, the Keep the Promise Coalition, which is focused on mental health, People First of Connecticut, which is a nonprofit, which is a self-advocacy group comprised of individuals who themselves have developmental disabilities, and then the Connecticut State Independent Living Council. These are all advocacy groups that can help to educate you and help mobilize people when we need to go to the Capitol and argue for changes in policy. And finally, the last of the 4 fact sheets that we released is a list of the departments of the state of Connecticut that actually provide services. Now, these aren't legal organizations. They're not going to help you with a complaint. They're not advocacy groups, really. They are agencies of the state that are funded under the law to provide specific services. So these are the Office of Early Childhood, which some of you may have experienced early. They cover things like birth to 3. The Department of Social Services has a host of programs for disabilities, mainly disabilities other than intellectual disabilities are served through the Department of Social Services. They also run the Medicaid program. Then, of course, there's DDS, the Department of Developmental Services, which is exclusively for people with intellectual disabilities. And we have a Department of Aging and Disability Services, which includes the Bureau of Rehab Services, which has our federal rehab program, which assists people with employment. So that was a lot of words, forgive me, but that's the information that we released back in May. And if you go to our website, we actually have a link to that press conference. It runs about 25 minutes if you have the patience, but we had a number of mostly lawyers from these organizations speak, including some legislators as well, about the fact that whatever happens in Washington, Connecticut has got your back. We've got the resources and the legal structure here to defend you, not just in special education, but in the wider world, where you have a right to equal protection.
And this is good to know because Washington, D.C. and federal assistance for, parents who are looking for support, that does seem to be on the verge of drying up. And the bottom line is that there's plenty of help here in Connecticut on a number of levels, depending on how urgent your situation is and exactly what's going on. Although, as I often say, that the challenge here in Connecticut is finding all that great support that's out there. We do have great support, but finding it, that is very difficult sometimes.
Well, I would say, I'm
yeah,
sorry.
no, go ahead.
No, just to riff off of what you were saying there, I think, navigating all this is not trivial. If you've been in the school system, you've been in a world where, much of your services are channeled through one place, right? It's your local school district. And you can ask for a lot. And as Kevin said earlier, those PPT meetings where you create the IEP are crucial. But when you get into the adult service world, it's a little more complicated because services are scattered in a lot of different places and navigating it is difficult. But the other issue is resources. While the state has in statute and in principle strong supports and protections for people, the number of attorneys that are available at CHRO, for example, is limited. The number of investigators at the Department of Public Health, which is another agency that might support you, are limited. So, if we go this route, where the states take on more of this job of, I'll say, enforcement, Um, we're going to need more. We're going to need the resources, right? We're going to need more lawyers, more investigators, more people for you to contact and to help you.
Well, just as I said before, with money being the cause of and solution to all the problems in public education, money is also going to have to be the solution to getting more help on the state level. And as citizens of Connecticut, it's only natural for us to turn to our state legislature for leadership on this. And isn't the state legislature planning to reconvene in a special session? I don't think it's this year, but starting next year, to start planning how to respond to the coming budget, if we have one
Well,
by next year.
let me say first that uh, there some good news is that we have legislators who got ahead of this. There were actually statutes passed in this last session, in the 2025 session that ended in June, that began the process of uh, reinforcing or expanding our state statutes in anticipation of the federal government, receding from some of these areas. So there were sections of federal law that got copied into state statutes in the last session. Now, that may sound kind of wonky, but that's critical because in order for the state to be able to take these actions and help you, any of us, uh, it's got to be in state law. So the good news is we have legislators who are ahead of this, who are already taking action to lay the groundwork and create the scaffolding, if you will, for the state to do more for us. Uh, now, the question of the so-called special session, uh, I'm as clueless as anyone. There was much talk about a special session coming up before the end of the year. Um, However, it's not clear what that would be about. At one point, the thought was it would focus on housing. The other thought is it would focus on shortfalls in federal funding. But as Kevin pointed out, it's very likely that the federal government's going to shut down at midnight, and we won't have a federal budget for some weeks, or who knows. And because of that, our state legislators and the governor's office, for that matter, we just don't know. I mean, we've all seen budgets, and by the way, I'm federally funded, so I'm waiting to see what tomorrow brings, for my agency. So I don't know what's going to happen, whether or not there's going to be a special session, and what the scope of that's going to be, because there's so much uncertainty about what may or may not happen in Washington now that they're going to shut down, and argue some more about what should go into the budget. I mean, as Kevin said, there are budgets out there. There's a budget request from the president back in June. Both the Senate and the House Appropriations Committees passed budget recommendations that need to go to the full Congress to be passed, and that's where we are right now. I mean, those documents exist, but how they're going to get modified and what they're going to look like after the shutdown, nobody knows. So the Connecticut General Assembly will reconvene in February, right? Next year is a so-called short session. And that may be the next opportunity we have for the legislature to take action. And we may not know until then what needs to be done. So, again, the good news is we have a lot of people of goodwill, not just in the legislature, but in the administration, who have seen this coming and are prepared to, keep the wheels turning and keep services going as best as they can while we wait for the federal government to sort this out.
So looking beyond the government short-down and the mess that it will create, there's actually some good news here. Basically, that when it comes to preserving the rights, the civil rights of people with disabilities and their equal protection under the law, there are forces here in Connecticut that have your back. And this is something that's important for parents and families of children with disabilities, even adults with disabilities, to understand. It's not time to reach for the panic button yet.
No, and as you said earlier, and it's important for people to realize that most of these services, most of the things we're talking about are the domain of the state. I mean, constitutionally, right? Uh, Education is a state responsibility. Now, yes, we have, a system that where the federal government grants money to states to help in certain areas. But as Kevin pointed out, in the great scheme of things, Connecticut receives less of that money than most other states. I mean, not that it would be easy for us to go without the 8% or whatever that we get, but uh, that's not going to destroy the education system. It's going to cause some pain, but it's something we can manage. The same is true of healthcare. Medicaid, realize Medicaid is a state program. We have a state medical assistance program. The federal part is just money that flows here. Now, there the reimbursement rate's a little higher. It's closer to 50%. So living without federal Medicaid reimbursement would be an extreme hardship. But the program itself is operated by the state. So all the people who do that, they're state employees. And we have a substantial state budget for medical assistance. Likewise, housing, transportation, employment, these are all domains of state service. Yes, there are some federal funds that flow in to subsidize those things, and it would be painful to have those funds reduced. But the basic responsibility and the basic functions that provide those services are all state. It's not the federal government that gives you vocational rehabilitation services, it's the state. So that's good news because it means we have the infrastructure in place to do this. And as Kevin said, it just comes down to money. Now, I'm not minimizing the budget issue that we have some serious, budget issues, but understand that the basic service delivery mechanisms and the basic responsibility lies with the state and always has.
Well, this is good to know and definitely reassuring in these unsettling times. Let's move on to Q&A, and this would be the time if you have a question for either me or for Walt, please send it. We'll be looking at the chat and the Q&A. And Walt, if you wouldn't mind putting some of those links that you mentioned into the chat, that would be very helpful.
Okay, let me grab that.
And meanwhile, I did get some questions in advance, and I want to thank the person who sent them to me. There are a number of issues raised here by the person who wrote. A parent who has a child who's a special education student. I can't answer all of them right now here because there's a lot to unpack in what you wrote. However, I would like to address one issue, which is access to school records. This is an important part of communication, just as important as having communication that is regular, two-way, and meaningful. I mean, this is part of the meaningful communication. Records of evaluations, records of PPT meetings, all the school records. Now, they should be available starting just a few short years ago online using CT SEDS, the Connecticut Special Education Data System. Now, this is almost universally hated system, universal, because I have a hard time telling sometimes whether school people like it less than parents or parents like it less than school people. However, all your child's school records should be online and available to you. And the way to get that, according to the Department of Education's guide to CT SEDS, if you're having a hard time accessing your child's school records online through CT SEDS, your go-to person is your child's case manager. Go to the first page of your child's IEP and you will see that person's name listed as the case manager. It's not always the special education teacher, but quite often it is. That person is your designated go-to person and the person who you would iron out these difficulties with. But it's important for parents to have these documents, and to me, it's crucial. Working with parents, going to PPT meetings with them, I always tell them I need to read records. I need to understand what's going on. And parents should do that too, even if you've already been present at PPT meetings, reading the record of these meetings, reading the evaluations. It's an eye opener. So let's see. There are two messages in chat. And Walt, yes?
I just want to, I put the link to our civil rights information in the chat, but I'm not sure that my chat is seen by other people because I'm a panelist. So can you ensure that the link that I put out there is seen by everybody?
Let's see. Yes, I've changed it, and everyone should have it. If you don't mind resending it, I'm not sure if it needs
Because
to be
my chat
resent again.
says that I'm only sending it to hosts and panelists. It doesn't say this is going out, but I'll put it in there again.
And just to be sure, I'm going to make a copy of it and put
Yeah,
it in.
maybe if you can make a copy and send it out to the public there, I'm not sure they can see what I'm putting in there.
Okay, and I hope you saw
There it is.
what I just
Okay.
added. Okay,
Yeah,
good.
see, I can't send to everyone. I can uh only send to you apparently. Anyway, I can see what people have in the chat, and I want to say hi to Crystal because she's a proud parents person, and I'm glad to see that she's here. Uh, Proud Parents is a great organization, by the way. If you're not familiar with them, that's a group of parents who themselves may have developmental or cognitive uh, conditions, and they're raising children. And we certainly want to help those folks. So Crystal asked, how long is the shutdown going to be? And of course, we don't know. Okay, the shutdown, it's a game of chicken, right? In the past, these things have run for weeks, maybe 3, 4 weeks. But we just don't know. I mean, this is a political game where how long can one side or the other stand the political flack from having the federal government shut down before somebody blinks and makes a concession to the other side, and that's kind of where we are.
I see there's another question from someone with the same name, Crystal, but before we move on to that and away from the original questions that were sent in, if you are with us, please contact me. I'd like to talk with you about what you raised in your message to me. The best way is email, kdaly@pathct.org. And we have a message. It says, I have sent a FERPA request to my child's school, and they are withholding the files. What can to do to access those files? Well, I can tell you what should happen, and this is according to the state statutes and the procedural safeguards that you should be bombarded with all the time from the school people. When a parent makes a request for school records, if it's in writing, and it goes to the right person. Eventually, it might not, but the school people really have 10 school days to provide the school records. That's 10 school days. Weekends don't count. But let's say you've done that and you're not getting the records. and the usual remedies, a phone call or a follow-up email, are either ineffectual or being ignored. Your best friend here in a situation like this could be the state of Connecticut, the Department of Special Education. You know, that it's an entire unit of the Department of Ed that's devoted to special ed and also resolving disputes between parents and schools. I think at the very least, an email or a phone call to the State Department of Education. They do have a parent helpline that can be called, which I sure wish I had that number on me right now. But if you go online and click around a little bit, you'll surely find that number. Talk to someone at the State Department of Ed about this. This should be a really minor thing. Getting school records, that's like it should be a no-brainer. And when you don't get them, and I know it can be a problem, it's like the tail wagging the dog. You know, there's so many greater issues that could be discussed. Getting the records ought to be a small one, and I realize it's not. So please, um, contact the state or contact me. Like I said, by email is the best way. kdaly@pathct.org. Now let's see. Here's one from Crystal. Hi, Walt. Do resources coordinate on proud parents group kids with disabilities and family peoples don't have disabilities get education, have guest speakers as time to time vary involved with gentle public? Thank you for tonight's spec.
Yes, and Proud Parents, they run a great program. They bring in guest speakers for their members and share information. And of course, the council supports them, and we're always available anytime they need information or speakers. Uh, it's a great group. And if anyone is looking for more information on Proud Parents, please feel free to contact me directly or through Kevin. I'd be happy to connect you with them. It's a great organization.
And I do see one question here that has not been addressed. How long will the shutdown be? And my opinion is that it's anybody's guess at this point. We have two sides that are fully entrenched, and it appears that no one intends to budge. You know, eventually something will happen, and maybe there will be a continuing resolution or not. This has happened before. Our government has been shut down before for a long period of time, too. We have survived. So while it sounds awful that the government is shutting down, you know, stick around. Nobody's going away. Walt, I want to thank you for joining us again on Answers. And is there anything you wanted to add as a closing thought?
I would just say, as a parent, I am, and as a professional now in this space, I am glad to be here in Connecticut. Now, understand the nature of my job is to make things better. So, implicitly, you know, I feel that things aren't perfect here. There's a lot of things we can do better, a lot of improvements we can make. But now that I'm, in this position and I interact with my counterparts around the country and other states, uh, right now Connecticut is a good place to be, and I'm glad we're here in a state that has our Constitution, these our guarantees for equal protection and due process and such. And if anyone has any questions or you want to follow up with me, please feel free to contact me directly. Thank you.
Well, Walt, I can't think of a better note to end on. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to our viewers for joining us, especially those of you who stayed till the end. And I hope you'll join us again on October 14th, just 2 short weeks from now at 6:30 for another edition of Answers as the journey continues. Thanks, folks.